cycle of human perspective.
Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining us for Paranormal Frequencies. We have Darryl E Berry back with us. In case people have missed it, Sherry, you want to introduce Darryl?
Yeah, sure. Darryl E Berry Jr. is a longtime practitioner, researcher, and observer of all things metaphysical, mystical, and cutting edge, including the out of body experience, extraterrestrial life, conscious development, channeling, telepathy, spirituality, especially A Course in Miracles and other non dualistic thought, and fourth density thought. For classes, courses, and information on future publication, visit the course and book links at the website www.darryleberryjr.com.
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
down in the description below. Welcome, Darryl.
Well,
Awesome. Glad to be here.
So I was checking out the new book. It's kind of the title catches your attention, Existential Suicide, and it's sort of a study guide for A Course in Miracles. Is that right?
Well, I would say it's a very pointed discussion ultimately about what enlightenment is. So most people don't realize when they're looking for enlightenment, that's what you're looking for. Like no one really reaches enlightenment. Basically, the moment before enlightenment, you decide to let go of your individuality altogether. And enlightenment is that state where you've totally let go of even existing and the self goes away. And all that's left is just that part of our mind that recognizes that there's only oneness.
So the title is referring to sort of death of the ego, maybe then, right?
Exactly.
Ah, very nice.
Exactly.
So can you give us an overview of what can be expected from the book?
Well, simply a breakdown of the process of forgiveness, which is the basis in the Course in Miracles of undoing the ego. So basically, the mechanism by which we protect ourselves from losing our existence is judgment. So there's one mind. So it basically, you could say that the foundation of the book is based upon an experience I had. So I should probably get into that experience.
Yeah.
So years ago, I was sitting in the college classroom considering myself from a forgiveness perspective, or considering my intellect, because I was always very intelligent. I was thinking, well, if what the Course is saying is true, and this is all an illusion, and everybody's just a projection of this one dreaming mind, then intelligence must be an illusion too. So it must be just a projection. So one person seems intelligent, and the other person seems unintelligent, but really it's just something that the mind is just throwing around. Ultimately, we're all that same mind. We have the same level of intelligence. Ultimately, in our subconscious mind, we all know everything because we're still that one mind. So, and intellect is just an illusion. And at the time, that was at the same time a very strong self-identifier. So when I had that moment of questioning one of my very solid self-identifiers, in that instant, you could say everything just went away. The universe just, my perspective as an individual self just went away, and I existed as this universal mind. And my experience was that I was this universal mind. Like people quote Buddha as saying, "There's only one mind in existence. One existing is many." And my experience was that I was that mind. And for a while, I just was, and I became aware of perceiving the field that is existence. So we're looking at each other now through this webcam, and we see our computers in our room. But from that perspective, the entire universe is just the field of meaningless activity, just meaningless activity, and all the different objects that we see from that perspective are just specks of just stuff. Much like how if you look at a video game, we look at the video game and we can parse out, okay, that's a character jumping over something or throwing a fireball or whatever. But really, it's just pixels on the screen, just a bunch of pixels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we didn't have a concept of a human being shaped this way and so on and so forth, it might even just be pixels to a different type of being. That's
Right.
really how the universe is. It's just a field of just meaningless activity. And from this perspective of universal mind, I recognize the little pixel that was me, the me I experience myself as now, and I recognize the me that I think I am now to be just another speck in this big field of meaningless specks. We're just this meaningless little speck amongst a big field of nothingness.
Mm.
And I also recognize that I, because I was the one that was dreaming this field, I didn't exist either. And it was one little moment where I could have made one decision and the universe would have disappeared and I would have disappeared too.
Mm-hmm.
But what came after that was in a level of terror that you just can't. You just can't describe. It was just absolute universal terror and not existing. And when that terror hit me, I just immediately tried to run from it and escape from not existing anymore. And I collapsed back. And then I was just sitting in class again. And so it was like wow. So that was like the first experience that I can say from a direct experience that what the course is saying is true, and I was able to directly experience the fear that a Course in Miracles talks about, that fear of not existing, that fear of losing our individual self. The course says that the ego, the part of our mind that wants to be separate, it could offer us just one thing to help maintain its belief, and that's our sense of temporary existence. So we want to hold on to that because as an ego, that's all we have. We believe it's us, and since we believe it's us, we fear letting it go. So I experienced the fact that we're this one universal mind, and enlightenment is that state.
Here, 1 second. Can you mute your other computer, Sherry? There we go. Sorry, she's
Awesome.
trying to. Her computer did an update just as we were going live, so she's trying to switch back to it.
And
So,
enlightenment is that no problem.
so the ego is frantic. It feels like it's losing itself. Once you start to let go of it, it goes into panic. It sounds like if I'm gone, there's nothing else. I have to be here, and it falls for the illusion, so to speak. Is that right?
That's right. And the thing about it is, like, I became very conscious of it in that moment. But the fact is, that's always going on underneath in our subconscious mind.
Right.
Every single moment, we're terrified at losing our existence. Every single moment, every single moment. And what happens is, every so often, that fear comes to the surface, and we organize the world in such a way as mind that it seems to be coming from the world. So a good example is just the other night I had a dream where there was this big disaster going on, and people was running and trying to escape, and planes was crashing and stuff. And then suddenly I started to get into this fight with this person, and I grabbed him really tight with my hand, and my hand in the dream was straining because I was holding him so tight, but I knew I had to hold him. I couldn't let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally woke up, I realized I rolled onto my hand, and my hand had fell asleep. So what happened is the dream formed itself into something that can make sense of the sensation that was going on in my hand. The sensation came first, the dream came second, or you could even say the dream came first. I've had dreams where the apparent effect of the dream came first. But suffice it to say, the dream morphed itself to make sense out of the sensation I was feeling.
I
And that's
think
what
we've
the.
all kind of experienced that, where you're laying on something or you're maybe in an uncomfortable position, and then you have a
Mhm.
dream that sort of tries to make sense of it. And the weird thing about that is, especially if it's a sound or something, it almost seems like your brain knew the sound or pain was going to come before it does.
That's
Like
right.
there's a sense of time where it doesn't make sense all the time. It's like, how did everything lead up to the sound that woke me up? And everything made sense up to that point. It's almost
Exactly.
like it back wrote it or something. Is that what
That's right.
happens? Or
Good point. Yeah, because the mind is outside of time. It reminds me of a dream that I had where I was going down the street and this big fire engine was coming down the street. And as soon as it came to me, the fire engine blared its alarm, and that was my alarm. But you think, well, the alarm came on after the fire engine was already coming,
right?
but the fire engine in the dream was the source of the sound. But how did I know to make a fire engine when the sound didn't come yet? So yes, so the mind is outside of time. And that's actually what the entire universe is. So we seem to be in time, going from past to future, but it's all happening at one time, which is one illusion that's literally an instant away from disappearing. So our whole lives, we're desperate to attack and judge, to try to protect ourselves from looking into our mind and recognizing this and losing our individual self. So
Mm-hmm.
existential suicide was a way to basically put that right front and center, which I'm
Right.
sure will not make it so popular. But of course, in Miracles itself is not so popular, even amongst people who think they study it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's an organization out there that's ordaining people as A Course in Miracles ministers. I mean, anybody who understands A Course in Miracles knows that has absolutely nothing to do with A Course. It makes absolutely no sense. It's a self-study course in undoing your ego through forgiveness. I mean, it's not meant to be a religion.
Right.
So you'll find that the majority of the people who study A Course, A Course in Miracles, don't understand what it means. So for those who really wanted to know what it means, I figured let me make something that goes to the heart of it, and to the heart of what I'm trying to do, of course, which is overcome my fear, so I can reach that point of existential suicide.
All right. Well, one thing I wanted to take a step back to was when you were talking about the time while you're asleep. Is that one of the mechanisms that sort of cause us to, because I guess they say most dreams are only like 6 minutes long, but sometimes it seems hours and hours. And I know you talked last time you were on, you talked about having experiences that were almost like lifetimes or whatever, right?
Hmm.
I love that story.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you
that's
could.
amazing.
Time is different. I mean, the fact is, even in the physical world, time is different. I start to learn more and more. Like there was a period of time when I was able to get out of body. Well, I didn't lose awareness. I was in body and out of body, and I was conscious back and forth the whole time, like I had 24-hour awareness. And both the waking state and the dream state started to become like a surreal reality.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's all a dream, just like how if you have a video game, you can make a video game where somebody's flying. You can make a video game or a movie where somebody's like just doing all kind of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to what we can normally do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. It's all just a projection of the mind. So you
Right.
can go backwards in time and forwards in time. Do it pretty regularly, really. Matter of fact, Bashar the Esfahani,
Mm-hmm.
he says that that's really how we always do everything from their perspective. Like when we walk, we're literally teleporting just a little bit at a time, but we set it up so it seems like we're walking. So that's a perspective that's still kind of bizarre to me because it feels like we're walking, but I can certainly see his point
Oh
that
yeah, definitely.
the mind is always doing everything. So yeah, time is just an illusion, just like space is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah,
You had
you
a
can
couple
speed
of
up
other.
time.
This book we're talking about is actually the second part, or
Well, technically, it's the second book in the series of practicing A Course in Miracles. So the
mm-hmm.
first one was forgiving people who believe the earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a series basically practicing A Course in Miracles. And this is the second in the series on practicing A Course in Miracles. And I also have a series on basically the classes that I gave on A Course in Miracles. I recorded the classes and put the transcripts in the book. And by the way, all my books are available online, like Travel Far is available online. Um, Classes on the Course in Miracles is available online. Half of it at this point. I'm waiting for somebody to say, "Here, I'm ready for the other half."
Mm-hmm.
My courses, like the courses on the astral projection, I'm not charging for that either. People could just sign up and join. So just so you know, I'm not just here trying to sell something. I mean, if you really wanted to read Travel for or classes on the Course in Miracles, you could just go online and read it. And whenever I publish existential suicide, I'll put the whole thing online as well. Just go to DarrylEberryJr.com. And the same thing for the class, you just sign up and do it.
And
But
I
yeah,
do
it's the
have that
second book
link.
in the series.
I do have that link below for you guys if you want to just click it. It's right at the bottom of the first paragraph of Darryl's bio. And actually, I got to add something to that to make it clickable. But yeah, it'll be there. Okay, there we go.
So, and I can't really say I have an idea in mind of where I'm going. Like I have a outline of books I want to write, but generally I just write what interests me. Like I'm writing some fiction books. I guess I'm always working on some book or other because I just enjoy writing, and this just happened to be the one that was finished next. So, um,
Yeah, it seemed like you wrote your book and then here it is, what, like 8 or 9 months later. Now there's like 4
mhm.
that's out, right?
That's right. This will be the fourth one that's out. So yeah, I enjoy writing, and it actually helps me. So a lot of times I write about what I'm working through. So I'm definitely not like it starts with the intellectual understanding. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely understand the Course in Miracles a lot better than I could practice it. I still get upset. I still get afraid. I still get all that stuff right. But I notice that I get upset less than I used to, and I notice that when I do get upset, it doesn't have to last as long. Like I had an experience just the other day where something was starting to upset me,
Mm-hmm.
and I could feel you could sort of feel this sort of it's almost like the analogy where there's like an angel on this side and a demon on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
and when it's like be angry, just yell or something. Other was like it's just a forgiveness lesson. Just look at it differently. It's just a dream, and it feels very good when I win. It feels very good to forgive and be peaceful and not be upset, and then you know that you're getting closer and closer to not existing, which I know may seem not so palatable to people, but the fact is life is just a series of this pain and upset, and is more or less apparent depending on how your life is. I'm pretty sure a multimillionaire who can get whatever they want all the time, they probably having a good time most of the time, so life is good. But I can't get what I want all the time. Usually it comes with I have to work, and even then Monday is taken, and I could go down a list of things that frustrates me or upsets me or just seems wrong that we all go through in our day-to-day lives, and so on and so forth. Not to mention if you have family and friends, and that all that never seems to go right, and it's just something is always going wrong. So for most of us, I think if we're really honest with ourselves, life is just suffering. Which is incidentally what the Buddhists often say. Life is basically suffering. So existential suicide is basically getting to the end of that suffering. And I also wanted to, well, another reason why I made it that title is because some people believe that physical suicide is escape, but it's not. And so you kill your body, and the same guilt and fear and pain you have, it doesn't go away, and you just reincarnate again, and then you end up going through the same things again, maybe even in a form that's worse. So I mean, the best thing you can do right now, especially if you're having a hard time and you're thinking about committing suicide, is to try to do something that can authentically make you feel good and make you authentically escape the pain of existing, which is forgiveness to the point that you could undo the self, which is to undo existence altogether. And but you don't just stop existing right away. At first, all the pain starts to go away, the upset, and you start to realize that you could be at peace no matter what. And then eventually, you can get to the point where you realize, you know what, I don't need this self either. I don't need the pain, and I don't need this self either. And that's when you reach a state of enlightenment.
Mm. Well, I have noticed, like what you were just talking about, getting triggered. Like for me, it's driving, man. I don't know. I guess because you're sort of caught off guard. Maybe somebody cut you off and you weren't expecting it, and then all of a
That's
sudden
right.
you're like triggered, And I've had it where you'd be mad for like an hour after that. You know what I mean? And you just go on and then you spread it to other people, and then it's you're actually doing the opposite of what you want to do with spreading the love and the light or whatever. So
That's right.
I've noticed that now. I'll catch it like right away, and then I'll laugh at myself because it's funny. I'm like, that's an old lady. What am I getting mad at her? She didn't see me, and then I just sort of take the step back out of the ego, because it's the ego that's surprised or hurt or fearful or angry or whatever. And so when somebody tries to commit suicide, like you were saying, they're killing the flesh but not the ego, right?
That's right. So it's just like if you very mad at your life and then you
Mm-hmm.
take off your shirt and stomp it and burn it and you think you're doing something. Your life didn't change at all, and then you're short one shirt. So it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, it doesn't really do anything at all. And I know that from first hand experience from going out of body many times, from meeting people who are deceased.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that doesn't really do anything. It's really just, yeah, it's just like as the masters describe it, like Gary Renard was visited by two masters, Art and Persa, two ascended masters, authentic ascended masters,
Mm-hmm.
and he described dying as just like leaving one movie theater and going into another one. So right now we're in a movie theater where I'm Darryl, and I'm having an interview right now, and I'm living here and so on and so forth. And then you walk into another movie theater where you're in this airy fairy place, and it's sort of time is kind of different, and you just meet your dead aunt and all that stuff for just like a different movie, but it's all illusory. And no matter, I mean, that's not to say that we shouldn't try to find happiness. I mean, I still try to find, like I was saying, writing is I enjoy it, so I
Mm-hmm.
do it. right?
Right.
So it's not to say that we can't try to find joy and happiness to whatever extent we can.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, I mean, it always, at some point, something bad happens, even if it's not to the point that we're about to die or someone we love dies or whatever the case is, because that pain is going to always come to the surface. We just have to keep that in mind. The pain that we experience in life is nothing to do with life. It has nothing whatsoever to do with what's going on. And I know how hard that is to maintain awareness of, because I mean, if I was to quantify it, I'm pretty sure 99% of the day, I still lose awareness of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, and you could experience it when you start to that 1% of the day when you experience it, you really start to see how the world really has nothing to do with our state of being. Is the unconscious guilt that comes to the surface that makes us upset. And just like our dreams at night, we form the world around us to match that sensation so we could blame it on the world and hide from our mind because we don't want to make that decision to no longer exist. So you thought that lady upset you, but really subconsciously you couldn't wait to get on the interstate, like Kenneth Wapnick said, who was a great teacher of the course. Subconsciously he was like, man, I can't wait to get in my car so I can have something to project this guilt onto.
Mm.
So now our self that likes to exist thinks of it this way. Okay, because as long as we exist, we will feel pain because we exist from our perspective at the expense of oneness.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we exist, we feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
But what the ego says is, you know what I'll do? I'll take this pain and keep it, but put it onto something else so I can still exist, but they have the pain. So then what we do is we get angry at somebody and we say da 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 da. And if we think back in our life, we can feel how good it feels when we tell somebody how guilty they are and they feel bad and we feel so good to see them upset and crying and feeling guilty
Mm-hmm.
about what they say they did, right? It makes us feel good because we believe, just like in the olden times when they used to sacrifice this lamb and imagine putting all their sins on this lamb and killing it or sending it away. We may believe that we've gotten rid of our pain by making that person hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's behind people being bullies. You know, they
Right.
feel bad and that guilt is coming in the surface, but they feel, you know, if I make you afraid and I see the fear and pain and guilt in you, it must mean I've gotten rid of it. But of course that doesn't work. So they got to bully again. Then they got to bully again. So nothing we do in the world is really going to get rid of the pain. The best we can do is like Kenneth Wapnick says, try to cope.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's one of my coping mechanisms is writing. One of my
Oh, that's
coping
good.
mechanisms is movies. We do things to cope. It could be whatever. And there's nothing wrong with whatever you do, whatever power, pleasure, fame, or wealth you try to find to make yourself feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we could simply start to forgive so we could authentically get rid of that pain and live an authentically happier life.
Absolutely. You know, my parents died about 12 years apart, both of terminal cancer. And the difference between my mom dying and how upset I was and my dad dying and really getting out of my own personal wants and just really seeing that he was no longer suffering. It was two completely, it was like night and day, you know.
Hmm.
Like with my mom, I was just all about, you know, I don't have my mom. It's all about me and all of this. But with my dad, I had reached the point just after 12 years of realizing I don't want him here suffering. You know, why do I want them here suffering just out of my own selfishness of wanting them here? So just that little switch in perspective, you know, had a tremendous effect on how I experienced that. So I want to ask you, Darryl, what do you think? What do you think it looks like for someone to reach sort of the top tier level of enlightenment while still being here around all these people? I mean, how can you exist? I mean, you know what I'm saying? How can you not ever get triggered? Can anybody ever reach that point where you know they look like they're operating like a regular human, but they just never get triggered, or would they look like a sociopath, or what do you think? You know, what would it look
Well, I
like?
can tell you from experience because what happens is every time you forgive, in that moment you experience it briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And what simply happens is the pain that's within inside you, because remember, nothing in the world ever upsets you.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing ever upsets you.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing in the world ever makes you feel afraid. Nothing in the world ever makes you feel guilty. Nothing in the world ever makes you feel upset, sad, lacking, empty, painful, regretful.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. It's only the guilt coming from within your unconscious mind.
Mm.
We project that guilt on the something so it seems to be the cause, but it's really the effect. We're projecting the dream and we're projecting the guilt. So when we recognize that's the effect, it's not the cause. I'm projecting a dream and I'm projecting this pain because I'm holding on to existence. But because the world isn't real, this pain can't be real either. So the guilt is nothing. It's just as illusory as the world. And when we let go of both and it goes away, there's only peace,
Mm-hmm.
because the pain is gone and all that's left is peace. So whatever seems to be happening is still going on, but it was never affecting you in the first place, so it can't affect you now. It was never affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
It was only your pain within that you felt. So once you let go of that pain through forgiveness, there's no more pain. As simple as that. So it's simply a recognition that it doesn't matter what happens on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
It was always what's going on the inside. So it's only a matter of letting go our own hold on to pain. And
Mm-hmm.
once we let go of pain, well, there's no more pain. That's as simple as that. It's not so easy to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really as simple as that. And when you start to practice it, and I could tell you, I mean, there's periods now that stick out of my mind where things happen to upset me. Like in the past, things would upset me. Certain things, we all have our pet peeves, things that's just, it may not upset anybody else, but it's that thing, and whenever it happens, whenever that person says that, does that, it's like, oh my gosh, that gets under my skin. And but one time, I remember forgiving one of these things, and the first thing it was just so amazing. It was just peace. It was just the same thing was happening, but it was peace. But the same thing happened the next instant, terror. It was just terrifying to realize, wow, this person doesn't really have an effect on me. It was just, it, it was. But going back to that moment before the terror hit,
Mm-hmm.
it's just as simple as that. Nothing ever affects you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see a person that's enlightened,
Mm-hmm.
you would just simply see a happy person. The Course describes them as a person that looks just like us, except they smile more frequently because there's no pain within them. So they will look just like us, except they would just be happier. You'll see them smiling more frequently. You'll see them not getting upset. You'll see them more caring, more loving, because we have two aspects to our mind. We have the part of our mind that remembers that the separation never occurred, and we have the part of our mind that's desperate to make it believe that it occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So once we let go of that part that wants to believe it's separate, all that's left is that part that recognizes none of this is real. Separation never occurred. There is no pain.
Mm-hmm.
So all there is peace. So you just meet a person that's just happy, that's just peaceful, and nothing could phase them.
Well, I've heard the analogy of your ego's driving the car and you're in the passenger seat and you want to get balance. You want the ego in the passenger seat and you want to take the wheel. Do you want it in the back seat? Do you want the ego in the trunk? How do you see this analogy playing out? Is it
Okay.
dead in the trunk or is it a balance in the passenger seat, so to speak?
The only way to really understand this is to recognize that we are the ego. So we often speak about it as, and even the Course sort of anthropomorphizes it in some parts of the Course to make it easier to discuss. But the fact is, we are that mind.
Mm-hmm.
When I existed at that level briefly as the universal mind, there was no me and then some ego sitting over here that I can battle with. It was just me
Mm-hmm.
and my absolute investment in existing.
Mm-hmm.
So really, when I say the ego, I mean us
Mm-hmm.
and our own selfish
Individuality.
investment in being separate as this
Mm-hmm.
one universal mind. And this one universal mind to escape from even the potential of making that choice to let go of its own existence, it projects itself out into a whole bunch of different pieces. And I seem to be Darryl, you seem to be Shane,
Mm-hmm.
and then we mirror that same dynamic of being a self that's invested in existence. But ultimately, if you want to really get good at forgiveness, you have to recognize it's not some ego that I have to battle against. It's not really a demon on this side and an angel on that side. It seems that way,
Mm-hmm.
but really it's just me wanting to exist, and I want to exist so bad that I'm gonna project this illusory world, and I want to exist so bad that I'll imagine myself to be this one little bitty person in this individual world, and I'm gonna make my mom treat me bad, and I'm gonna make the government steal my money, and I'm gonna make this old lady run me off, and I'm gonna make all these things happen so I can have all of these things to blame for this pain that I feel at choosing to exist. It really is all us doing that. And what I find is the more and more I forgive, the more and more I start to consciously look at it from that perspective. So I would say seeing the ego as some separate thing is a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stay there, it will impede you. You have to recognize that it's only you wanting to exist and experiencing the pain of your own insistence on being separate from oneness, and all the games that you play to try to make other people and other things responsible for the pain you're choosing.
Mm-hmm.
So
How do you go about forgiving people? Because I know one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to realize that if someone really had the knowledge or the experience to not treat me a certain way, if I feel like I've been offended or I've been done wrong, um, I think they wouldn't, you know what I mean? So it almost gets back to where Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they do. And that's sort of this whole thing. You're like, they don't realize exactly how they're offending me right now. I shouldn't take it personally, you know what I mean? And that's sort of probably the most comprehensive way to look at things, you know what I mean, as far as forgiving others. But do you have any tips, what you use or tools or anything?
Certainly. That what you said there is an effective way to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
If it can help you to not judge somebody,
Mm-hmm.
then it'll get you in the process of undoing your unconscious guilt.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure I specify though that when the course says forgiveness, it's almost a different word.
Mm-hmm.
So when the course talks about forgiveness, it literally means looking at the world from the perspective of the dreamer of the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if you see somebody as separate from you, but you recognize that maybe they just don't know what they're doing, like the old lady, maybe she just didn't see me. I mean, she's old, she has cataracts, she probably just didn't see me,
Mm-hmm.
and you notice you let go of your judgment,
Mm-hmm.
that'll help,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll continue to move you along.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you'll realize, you know what, there is no old lady out there.
Right.
That person is just a projection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the level of forgiveness that the course comes from. The course says that you forgive by recognizing it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's the course's forgiveness. So the bottom level of forgiveness is, you know what, you did it, but you didn't really mean it. You didn't really know what you was doing. You did it, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a mistake. So and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Then you move to the step of realizing, you know what, I did you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the dreamer of the dream.
Right.
That's just an image acting out for me that I put there for the purpose
Mm-hmm.
of being the image that I can project this pain onto. So since that's just an image, it's just an effect. Since I'm the dreamer, since I'm the projector, I can't be real either because if that's illusory, it can only come from what's illusory. And the guilt that we feel is because we believe we separated from oneness. So if I don't really exist, if I'm not real, there's no separation. So the guilt in me is not real either.
Mm-hmm.
So I can recognize there's no guilt in you because you were just a projection of me in the first place. There's no guilt in me because I'm just a projection too. The separation never occurred. So really, I could let both of us off the hook because nothing ever happened. No matter what happens in the world, it's still just a dream. If I have a video game where I wreck somebody's car, like that video game where you're robbing cars and stuff, well, just a video game. You could just press reset or just turn the thing off. It doesn't. We're not gonna carry somebody off to jail because they robbed the car in the video game because it's a blasted video game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the perspective of forgiveness that the course takes. You literally start to recognize that this world is not real. That perspective that I had briefly, you start to literally develop that perspective on a day-to-day basis. You start to recognize that this is all a projection. It's an effect of our choice to believe that we separated from oneness. And when we recognize this isn't real, thus the choice can't be real, there's no guilt at all because a separation never occurred.
That totally makes sense.
And what starts to happen is, again, it's not like you become psychopathic and you become unfeeling. It's just that part of ourselves that recognizes that we never separated from oneness, that we try to dissociate by blaming and judging.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes what we are. That's why, for instance, like there's people on earth that have been described as being enlightened, like the ascended masters described uh, um, Mother Teresa as being enlightened, just
Mm-hmm.
loving person who was just, and I'll never forget, um, she was. I saw this documentary called Mother Teresa, and it's fabulous. It's something that you'll want to watch. I watched it several times, and there was one part of the documentary where she was granted some land to build one of her missionaries, but then some people wanted to build a mall there. She was already granted the land, so they came to her to try to convince her to give up her land. They were saying stuff like, you know what, this is in the middle of the city. It's going to be so busy and noisy. They just was trying to manipulate her.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying there's all kind of stuff. And she just responded like, well, you know what? I think it's best for us to be here. But, whatever it ends up being, it's okay. She was just totally non-judgmental. And you could tell, you could look at that person's face and see how guilty they were at trying to do that to Mother Teresa. And you could see in her face, she was just, she had no judgment. There was another part where in the documentary where she was being asked, people say you're like a living saint. How, I mean, what do you say to people who say this? So she was like, well, you know, being holy is not specific to saints or anything. You say it's my job to be holy in the position where I am. It's your job to be holy in the position where you are. Another part she was saying, from her perspective, again, it's religious, and I put it in God's hands. And if you live in a palace, live in a palace.
Mm-hmm.
If you're living on a street, live on a street. Just do it all for God, and don't judge. And you can really see that she was really a living example of that. So it's just, it's not even a barely. What I found is that A Course in Miracles is so direct
Mm-hmm.
that the process is exponentially fast. But just like I was saying earlier, even if you forgive from the perspective of really believing that the world is ruled and these people are separate, if you do it over and over, eventually it'll continue to move in the direction to where that impetus to judge goes away,
Mm-hmm.
because the guilt within yourself goes away. And when that guilt goes away, there's just nothing left but peace. And um, Yeshua, he was crucified,
Mm-hmm.
still felt no peace. Only peace. Another interesting thing is even physical pain
Mm-hmm.
is the effect of unconscious guilt. Because again, the whole world is a dream. Like I said, when I was got really good at out of body experience at a period of time when I was practicing a lot, the physical and the non-physical world both became this surreal dream, right? And just like in a dream, you could not feel any pain because it's just a dream. So if you don't have any guilt within your mind, you will literally not feel any physical pain, because even physical pain is simply a projection onto our own body of that same unconscious guilt. So, and as you start to practice this stuff more and more, you start to actually be able to experience this, and it's paradigm changing.
Is there anybody else that you think has reached that level? You said the Mother Teresa documentary is something good, a good example to go watch and see how she handles it. That sounds pretty interesting. Is there
Oh
anyone else
yes.
that?
Oh yes, the Mother Teresa, and that's according to the Ascended Master. And when I look at her and I read her books,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I could see the peace in her. Byron Katie,
Mm.
no Ascended Master, vetted this, and even the Course says, when you judge somebody else, I'm still looking through the lenses of my own ego, so I might not be 100% accurate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from my observation of her, to me, she seems enlightenment. And when I study some of her works,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go through a lot of Byron Katie's books and videos to find it. But when you study a purely non-dualistic teaching like A Course in Miracles, and then you go through some of the videos of Byron Katie and see what she says, she's coming from a purely non-dualistic perspective. Like she wrote this book called, I believe, it's Losing the Moon,
Mm-hmm.
but she talked about how the world is illusory, how there's only the mind, it's just a projection, just a dream. She did this interview with somebody where she started talking about how there's only mind and not even that.
Mm-hmm.
There's this book called Thousand Names for Joy, where she talks about how um, her she doesn't even have an individual self anymore. Like her identity changes from being a tree to a mountain to a mosquito. And then when I see her guide people through forgiveness, she has this practice called the work, where you basically question your thoughts. But when you look at it from the perspective of a purely non-dualistic teaching like A Course in Miracles, you can see it's just forgiveness. And you can see the effect of that inner peace that comes in the forgiveness that she guides people towards. So in my observation, Byron Kate is another enlightened being. And that's really the only two I'm confident enough about to say
Mm-hmm.
publicly, which is Byron Katie and Mother Teresa. There's a few others I'm looking at as well, but definitely Byron Katie and Mother Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
I believe personally, I guess I can't really say for sure, but I tried to get Kenneth Wapnick to admit that he was, or say that he was, or answer the question. Kenneth Wapnick is like this, basically the prime teacher of A Course in Miracles, and I tried to basically, let's say that was me being manipulative. I tried to sort of lead him to kind of answering the question, but people told me people tried to ask him if he's enlightened, and he never would say, and he wouldn't say. But definitely, you could tell he's a peaceful guy. So
It
I
almost
was
takes the ego to be at a certain level to want to even try to admit that, right?
to say again.
I said you almost need your ego to be at a level to even admit that you're enlightened, because once the ego is what wants to be known as enlightened, not the absence of ego, right?
No, because I mean that's a very understandable perspective, but the fact is you cannot judge what an enlightened person does because the world is just an illusion. So we have this idea, like for instance in the Catholic Church, they have this idea that to be spiritual you can't have sex.
Mm-hmm.
The enlightened masters point out that Jesus had sex.
Mm-hmm.
He was not celibate,
Mm-hmm.
and he enjoyed and he needed sex in his life up
Mm-hmm.
until like the last few years of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might think that a enlightened person might not be violent,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you have to be violent. Like the enlightened master is saying, I believe in this person universe that like forgive when you can, but if somebody's like trying to attack you, simply defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's we're not able to say this is the action of an enlightened being. So if a person is enlightened, it's very possible that they can say, hey, you know what, I have undone my ego. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that they won't be saying it from an egoic place. They won't be, yes, I'm enlightened. You know,
Yeah.
like I never forget, like one of the first A Course in Miracles classes I went to. Um, this guy, he was talking about how, uh, I mean, it was just so clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was wanting to pretend to be enlightened, but clearly he wasn't. But he could not. He was trying to basically pull his egoic actions into that illusion. So he was going on this tirade about how the Holy Spirit, A Course in Miracles calls that the part of us that recognizes that the separation never occurred, that wants peace, to be the
Mm-hmm.
Holy Spirit. He said the Holy Spirit had him yelling and angry, and that's one thing the Holy Spirit would never do, because again, once you let go of that ego, there is no anger.
Right.
So that's your state of mind will always be one of peace, but your
Mm-hmm.
actions will always be, it could be whatever is appropriate to the time. So, but you could really see he was visibly upset and angry, and he was trying to say that the Holy Spirit had him be angry to show this person a lesson, when
Mm-hmm.
that would never be the case.
Right.
So, but the fact is, you can have a person. I mean, I don't remember where I heard it from, but some people say that if somebody is yelling at you, sometimes it might be because you haven't been listening. That's the
Right.
only way you was able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So you might see an enlightened being raising their voice or even getting physical with somebody, let's say to defend themselves or defend somebody else. But again, within there'll only be peace. You can't really judge from the outside. So yeah,
It seems funny that there seems to be some sort of mechanism in place when it comes to judgment. Like, you'll judge somebody on something, and then like the next thing it'll be a week later, and then you're doing the same thing. So, like my example about the traffic, like maybe I got cut off, and maybe I judge that person, then I won't be paying attention. I'll be messing around on my phone, and I'll cut somebody off like the next day,
that's
and I'll be
exactly
like,
right.
look, I just did what that lady did to me yesterday, and now they're mad at me, and then you realize that, oh my God, I just did what I was mad at that other person for. And that
That's exactly
goes,
right.
I mean, I remember my brother once getting on to me how dirty my car was, and his truck was always brand new. But as soon as he got on me, the next time I went to ride with him, he had like McDonald's stuff all over the floor, and I'm like, dude, you were just yelling at me like the other day about my car being dirty, and look at all this, and I didn't
What did
know
he
at that
say?
time, but now it's,
Understand? Good.
there's a mechanism in place. It seems that like as soon as you judge somebody, you're going to learn you shouldn't have done that because you'll find yourself doing it.
So
And what
I'm
did he say, by the way, when you just told him that?
He just blew it off or something. He's 9 years older than me. He's my
I
big
got you.
brother, so I was just being insubordinate. you know? But yeah, it's amazing how it seems like that comes around, and it almost gets me back to what is it, Matthew 7:1, judge not lest you be judged. And it's
That's
it's
right.
almost telling you right there, don't judge or you're going to be judged for the very thing.
See, I found that really early on. Like if I would judge somebody about something, it would happen to me. And then I had like tons of things happen to me that I used to be judgmental about,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm like, it just made me like more understanding. But if I was to say of something that I would be struggling with right now, it's like there's like one or two people I can think of in my life, and other instances that have happened where like when someone does something to me that upsets me or whatever, like I'm not somebody that's gonna like stick up for myself ever, which it's just a bad trait I have or whatever. But my point is that I will like separate myself from them, and then I no longer have to deal with them, and that's probably not good either. But like, in like one instance, I have like this kind of intermediate boss person that just she just like triggers me all the time, you know. But I don't say anything. I just like, you know, kiss her butt and hope for a good day. You know? But I'm not gonna go hang out with her is what I'm saying.
Hmm?
You know, like I like kind of separate myself from him. But so I need to work on that obviously somehow.
Is
Okay.
that
Well,
so? Is that the ego that makes her want to be aloof and not face it, or is that does she have her ego under control? I mean, she realizes she got triggered, but she doesn't act out on it. Or,
well, one thing to keep in mind from the course's perspective, we have to always keep in mind that the world is an illusion.
mm-hmm.
So we can't necessarily judge an act itself as being spiritual or unspiritual. So I would say, if my leg was to itch right now, you know what I would do?
Scratch it.
Scratch it.
I would scratch it. So I would say that if somebody's getting on your nerves or somebody's causing you discomfort, that seems sensible to get away.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's some instances where we can't get away, like maybe you're living with somebody and well, whatever the situation is, or maybe it's a job that you can't leave right now, and so I mean maybe you want to try to do like you said and do whatever you got to do, kiss up or whatever till you can leave. But I think that it's there's nothing wrong with being just doing a normal thing. So I would say that if somebody's causing you a problem, if you can get away
Mm-hmm.
from them, so you don't have to deal with that. Let's keep in mind that that's not going to heal your mind. Keep in mind that the pain is still coming from within, but I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to work on the inner self if the symbol for it is right there on your face. Sometimes you have to separate yourself practically from the symbol to deal with it. It's like if somebody's in an abusive relationship and you're trying to heal from that, it might be difficult if you're seeing the person every day. You might have to get away from that person so you can properly look at it and start to forgive and inside. Now, it's possible when you get to a more advanced level to be able to forgive in that moment. And let's say the person is doing whatever to get on your nerves and you forgive and it's not getting on your nerves anymore, and you can let that person continue to just tap their finger and not even tell them nothing. And whereas a minute before it was like, bothering you like you want to jump out your skin, now the person, they're just tapping their finger. So what? As to use a very simple example, but yeah, that's possible. But at the same time, it's totally, it's not unspiritual to say, hey, could you please stop tapping your finger, and then you could work on forgiving it, and maybe next time you could forgive it, and it won't bother you, right? So there's nothing wrong with it either way. I would say there's nothing wrong with just doing what you can to try to stay healthy. There's nothing wrong with going to the doctor. You don't have to be spiritual and not take medication, or there's nothing wrong with, or whatever it is. Just do whatever is normal and natural to try to help yourself feel good, as long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else as much as possible. But just remember along the way that if you don't forgive, that guilt will still be there. And then when you leave your job, you'll go to your next job and you'll find somebody else that annoys you. Or you'll go to your next relationship and you'll find the next thing that person that annoys you. Or you'll find you keep getting in the same type of relationship over and over because you're not healing that guilt. So just remember, whatever you do in the physical world, if you do not address that unconscious guilt, it'll keep projecting itself over and over into some of the situations, which goes back to the dynamic that Shane was talking about earlier. The reason why we see that dynamic in other people is because we're projecting it.
Mm-hmm.
The Course says projection makes perception. We see outside what's within us.
Mm-hmm.
So projection makes perception. So we always judge people for what we do. And the fact that you can see that, I mean, that's amazing. That shows that somewhere maybe you're not practicing the form of a Course in Miracles, but like you said, you've been practicing forgiveness. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously you've been making some progress to even be to the point to see that, because you can find people and you can point that out. They're telling you, hey, you're always borrowing money from people and not paying them back, and they owe you for like four times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can't see it, and you can tell them, hey, you owe me $200 from. Why are you talking about old stuff? They just can't, they can't acknowledge it, and then they come in to borrow money from you again and not pay it back, and they can't see it. So but that's why, because projection makes perception. Yes, there's a good book called Personal Power Through Awareness, channeled by Shania Roman, where they say that the reason why we judge people is because they're showing us what we're working on. In other words, it wouldn't irk us so much if we weren't seeing ourselves in that person.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, there's things that upset other people, but don't upset us at all. I never forget one time. This was back when I used to walk around selling jewelry and stuff, and I used to sort of debate religious people at the time, and like debate religious people and point out all the flaws in their religion and stuff. And I'll never forget, one of the guys I was walking with, this lady who we stuck kind of started debating. She just started saying stuff like, "Oh Lordy, oh mercy." She was just saying stuff like that, and my friend was about to jump out his skin. He was just getting so upset by this. Ladies are going, "Oh Lordy, oh bless him, oh Lordy, they need Jesus, oh Lordy." And I was standing there hearing the same thing. I was like, I mean, obviously she's just trying to get to you, but he would just. He looked like he just wanted to clock her when he was so upset. And at the same time, I've been on the other end. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen people do stuff, and it just irks me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to tell people, look what the person's doing. And like, so what? I mean, it's so whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going out of my skin. So the fact is, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always our projection. And oftentimes you'll find, just like I found myself, that when I judge somebody else, if I look within enough, I'll see that I do the same thing in some form, which goes back to Byron Katie's The Turnaround. Because she has a part of her questioning where she will say, okay, write down your judgment. And the judgment might be, you don't keep your car clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like your brother was doing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the turnaround would be, I don't keep my car clean.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have to do at that point is try to find three examples where the same thing is true for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even be 10 years ago. Well, you know what? I remember a year ago, I bought that soda and I was in a rush. So that one time I dropped that cup in my car because I was in a rush. Well, that's one time.
Right.
And every single instance, whatever we judge somebody for, we can find, like, for instance, the flat earth people. You believe something silly.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely think back to when I believed some silly stuff.
Yeah.
Right, and yeah, and or when I was delusional, all the things that I say, when I've been stupid, when I've been ignorant, when I've been in denial, when I've been delusional, and when I've been lazy, I've been all of those things, and I'm sure I'll be those things again. But the fact is, I was judging them so much because I was hiding from my own examples of those things.
Mm.
So that doesn't mean we can't point out where somebody's being stupid.
Right. Right.
But if you do it from a judgmental perspective, then you're
Right.
really hiding from your own stupidity, which is, from a Course in Miracles perspective, is just it's stupid to judge if you're supposed to be believing in forgiveness, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah, it really helps you start to see the projection that we have, and that's what that dynamic is. It's just projection of why we see it, because we're putting it there.
Do you
That's why
think
we see
people
what we do.
do you think people have a lot of unforgiveness towards themselves? I mean, as much as other people, that it's sort of just hidden there that they don't realize?
Well, I'll have to make sure I hit that point accurately. I have to point out that the fact is, it's no different,
Mm.
because it's all an illusion. We're really that one dreaming mind.
Right.
So whether I'm judging you because of what you did or didn't do, or I'm judging me because of what I did or didn't do, there's really no difference. The
Mm.
part of ourselves that wants to be separate doesn't care. As long
Right.
as I make the world real, then
Mm-hmm.
then it's working. So whether I'm thinking about something I said in the past or something I did in the past, and I'm thinking shoulda, coulda, woulda, I can't believe I did that, or I'm never going to get this right, it never works out for me, then you're just projecting guilt on yourself, and it still keeps the separation real. It still keeps the pain alive. Or what I'm saying, you cut me off, or you didn't clean your car, or you're irritating me, and I have to kiss your butt to just survive because I have to work here.
Mm-hmm.
It's still projection guilt and keeping the separation alive. So it doesn't really matter. There's no difference. Sometimes we project on what seems to be ourselves. Sometimes we project on what seems to be others. There's really no difference. You have to forgive both just the same, because it is just the same. It's all just an illusion.
So the unforgiveness leads to the guilt, and that leads to the problems.
Well, I
The
mean, it's
guilt.
sort of a chicken and the egg thing. I mean, you could say
Mm-hmm.
the unforgiveness leads to the guilt, or you could say the guilt leads to the unforgiveness. Is a chicken and the egg, because, I guess if you really want to look at it, shall I say, sequentially,
Mm-hmm.
the guilt came first. So basically, what happens is you have this illusory mind that's invested in being separate.
Mm-hmm.
That's the equivalent of sin,
Mm-hmm.
and the experience of having done something wrong is guilt,
Mm-hmm.
and guilt demands punishment. When you feel guilty, you want to be punished, you believe you're going to be punished, maybe even deserve you're going to be punished. That's the self-sabotage you might have.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear of punishment causes us to want to attack someone else by making them guilty, so we can believe the punishment is going to be on them. So sequentially, you would say first there's the belief in separation, then there's the guilt over that belief in separation, there's the fear of being destroyed because we separated from oneness,
Mm-hmm.
and then we project that out and judge somebody else so we can see them as being the cause.
And
But
what's funny
then,
about that, we're really doing it to ourselves when we
that's
do
right, because
that.
there is nobody else,
Right.
and that's the kicker. The illusion is that there's somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why the guilt doesn't go anywhere. It just comes back up. Temporarily, it seems like it works because we feel so self-righteous and so good. Like, look how angry that person is. I've seen it happen when someone tried to make me angry or tried to make me guilty,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't get angry.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how they might even get more angry because they didn't succeed in convincing themselves that they dumped their pain onto you.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've gotten angry. I felt guilty, and you can see the glee in that person's face. And we've all had it, making this person feel get bad or wrong, or letting them see how, or even maybe talking to somebody else and we telling somebody what this person did to us, and they're so bad and so wrong. And when they agree with us, and we're on this bandwagon, it feels so good, and you feel so justified. It's because we temporarily believe we got rid of our guilt. But as you said, since there's nobody out there anyway, all we did was push it down just for a little while. Then it comes back up, and either we're judging that same person, or if, like Sherry was saying, we leave the scene and go somewhere else, we'll just find somebody else to project that guilt onto, which again, it might be necessary to leave. I've left several situations, and but you just have to remember, if you leave a situation, if you don't go back to it and forgive it, it will come up again. We will project it again because we're always projecting it. What ends up happening is you could almost kind of see it as a delayed reaction. So like let's say if I throw you a football,
Mm-hmm.
right? The football will hit your hand after it is let go of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, when I start to forgive, there's something I've already projected that hasn't landed yet. And again, there's nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm throwing the guilt to you, but I'm the one that's standing over there. I just don't recognize it. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's you. So I'm going to get that pitch I just threw.
Mm-hmm.
So what may happen is when you start to forgive, you may still start getting all the balls you threw before, and that person may come back into your life, or somebody else may come back into your life. The difference is when it comes up again, when you forgive, you'll still experience peace in that same situation, and that's how you know you're really forgiven. It doesn't have to happen that way, but in my experience, it usually ends up coming back again. Um, I mean, of course, sometimes you don't even recognize it. Like sometimes it's after the fact. Like I realized, like to use your example, you know what? That person cut me off a few miles back. I didn't even twitch. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I let the person go. It's not that, oh, you're getting on run. It's not that road warrior type thing going on. You're like, yeah, get in, guy. I don't really care. And it's like, wow, I didn't feel defensive in my lane for a moment there. So you just sometimes it's even after the fact you realize that the same thing happened again, and you didn't get upset, and eventually no matter what happens, you just don't get upset. It's just all the same thing. Sometimes it might be something apparently good,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it might be something apparently bad, but within you're just always at peace because there's no pain in there to project the experience of pain.
Right. So in Sherry's example, when she's talking about like her boss doing something to aggravate her or whatever, we all had that position. I mean, I've been pulled over for stupid stuff, and you want so badly to go off on the cop, but you want to be polite because they've got this position of power over you. You don't want to be
That's right.
disrespectful. You should always be, you know what I'm saying, and because they're on edge, they're doing their job or whatever. So I don't know. It's like, how do you think the way she handled it walking away might have been good, but like, and mentally, where should she have been with that? Like, just like, oh, their boss, just let them have their way. It's no big deal, and just kind of like not take it so seriously, maybe.
Well, the course has this verse. It says, "I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do,
Mm-hmm.
because He who sent me will direct me." So what this means is when we forgive,
Mm-hmm.
from that place of peace, we'll simply know what to do. So there's no way you could really intellectualize
Mm-hmm.
what to do, because even if you get it right, it still won't come out right because that anger or fear will be what's acting it out.
Right.
So really, all you have to do is forgive, and you'll simply know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way for me to say, well, you should be thinking about it this way, like or that way, except just to forgive, just to recognize, at least from the course's level. Again, there's many different forms of forgiveness, but in my experience, the course's forgiveness is the most fast to get to the end game because it gets to the core of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Simply recognizing that this person seems to be upsetting me, but they're not. They're an effect. They're a dream character that I'm dreaming. I seem to be the effect of their attack, but this self was just a dream character as well. We're both being projected to act out this scenario. So me as a dream of the dream can make believe that the pain is being caused by this world. But since the world is not real and the cause can't be real either, the separation never occurs, so there's no guilt in the first place.
Right.
There's no guilt even to project onto you. So you as a separate person is innocent because it's not real. Me as a separate person is innocent because it's not real. Me as a dreamer, the dream is innocent because nothing ever happened. And then you just do the right thing at that point.
So I'm
So
having this realization though, all of a sudden. Okay, so if I was able to like get rid of all kind of judgment on people, you know, because things are happening or whatever. But for years, I just my biggest thing that gets me is like mean people. Okay, so
mhm.
I mean, I had a bumper sticker on my car that said "mean people suck," and when I got rid of that car, I mean, I searched back before there was computers to find another one for my next car, and it's like, okay, so it's really funny because I have this daughter, my oldest daughter, who's like really mean. Like she is mean to me and she's mean to my other two kids and stuff like this. But I decided, so Wyatt's 7. So I decided like when she was getting around the time she was getting married, I will not fight with her. I love her. No, so this is where forgiveness would come in with her because she's my daughter. So okay, I love her no matter what, unconditionally. So I just like don't fight back with her and just love her anyway. And eventually, all of a sudden, like in the past year, she's really starting to be like she'll shock us and she's being nice because I've told my kids to handle her the same way, you know. So, I don't, you know, maybe I just maybe need to learn to treat all anyone else that's mean to me like I do her, you know, just like, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, at the start, a lot of times our forgiveness start at the physical level, especially if your judgment takes the form of, you know, telling somebody off or physically abusing somebody. You know, sometimes it might be necessary to change your physical action before you start forgiving. Just like, you know, it's always appropriate to forgive, but the moment may not be amidst the physical attack. You may just want to defend yourself and forgive it later. So yeah, so I mean, if your judgment or your perception of her judgment took the form of treating her a certain way, if to you it symbolizes being more loving, more kind, more forgiving, to treat her kinder, I would say, yeah, I do that.
Yeah, 'cause I
So
used to
that
stick up for myself with her, or stick up for my kids against her, and
that as
preach
well.
like stopped. And I was just like, you know what? We'll just be happy and be ourselves, no matter how she's acting. And then she kind of like stopped acting that way. The more it progressed, I'm gonna have to try that out on
That's
everyone.
kind of funny that you do come across that where it seems like the less you respond to some people, the more they'll just stop because they're not getting a response from you anymore. You know.
That's right. I'll never forget. I knew this guy who was married with this lady who she always wanted to argue and yell and argue and argue. And once he stopped arguing, she divorced him. Because he wasn't arguing with her anymore, and she left. So the fact is, people want to play this game where
It's almost
we're
like you get
projecting
addicted
guilt.
to it, don't you? You get
I
addicted
mean,
to the drama, and some people do. You know.
well, it's not that you get addicted. We were born addicted because we come from this individual self, this ego self that wants to exist, and that's the defense mechanism. So
Mm.
the reason why we're born is to project. We don't come here like the common misconception is that we're born as some innocent babies and then the world corrupts us. No, you individuality is pain. It only
Mm-hmm.
exists as an effect of believing that we're separated from God, which is the sin.
Mm-hmm.
Experience guilt because of that, had the terror that I felt as that mind, and then want to escape that by projecting, and then we're born and we exist. So you do not come into this world unless you're an insane, egomaniac, angry, fearful person. If you're not that, you are not born. That's why enlightenment is breaking the cycle of birth and death, because since there's no more guilt, there's no more impetus to come into this world to have someone or something to project onto. So it's not that it becomes addictive. We come here, we know what we're getting into. It's not an accident that we have sisters that's mean to us, or daughters that's mean to us, or jobs that's bad to us, or criminal organizations that call themselves government. It's not an accident. We make it this way so that we can have all of these things to project our guilt onto as purposes. So we could play this game of pretending that you're the bad guy and now I exist. but the pain is in you, and they're playing the same game. No, I exist, but you're the bad guy, and we're just going back and forth, projecting onto each other and over. And then it's this party is the bad party, so then we elect that party, then that party is the bad party, then we elect the other party, or it's, it's the husband is the bad one, or the wife is the bad one, or the kid is. It's all just a game. It's just all something that we know we get into. That's why death is not release. When people die, they don't go to a place of non-suffering. Temporarily, it might seem less suffering, just like temporarily it feels good when you make somebody guilty. But even then, that guilt comes to the surface, and just like I experienced as that universal mind, that terror comes and that pain comes, and you run away from it, and we run away from it in the physical world, because that's how the universal mind designed it. It projected separation to hide from even the choice of letting go of separation because it wants to exist. So we come to the world wanting to find something to judge and project onto, because that's the purpose of the world. That's the purpose of life. When you die, it's the same thing, and we running from it there to come back here, and we're constantly going back and forth. We're born, and this is hell, so we want to die, and we think that's release. And we die, oh my gosh, I still feel horrible. Let me get born again, and it's back and forth and back and forth. That must be why the Buddhists calls it samsara, the cycle of birth and death. It keeps going around and around. But once you undo that guilt through forgiveness, then you're no longer incarnated again, because you no longer have a desire to have someone or something to hate and judge or fear or be the victim of. So when we're a victim, we're just as tyrannous as the tyrant. Because the fact is, like we talked about the government, that's one of the big things I'm still forgiving as well. But the fact is, when people talk about the people that's those bad Illuminati people that's ruling the world, what percentage of the population are they?
Less than 1%.
Yeah. So if we really wanted to, it could all stop tomorrow.
Yeah.
We can stop using money. That's one reason why in my books I'm putting them online for free. In my courses I'm going to teach them for free, because we could all do this. If we just stop, if today we decided we're not going to use money anymore. You know what? My skill is writing. I'm going to just write and share it with you. My skill is teaching. I'm just going to share it with you. Hey, my skill is growing food. I'm going to just grow food and share it. And my skill is fixing cars. I'm going to just fix cars. And we just all did the same thing we're doing now, but eliminated money. Those people lose all their power. In one day, they will 100% lose all their power, because they can't do anything. The government doesn't do anything except we make money valuable, and then they control the money. So then they steal the money back from us and pay people to dominate us. And even those people are just a small handful of people. So the police, all those people, they're just a small handful of people. If we really wanted it to stop, it can stop right now. Because again, it's all adds up to a very small percent. If you're in a rowboat, one analogy I used on the 100 Monkey radio show was, if you had 100 people in a boat, a big long rowboat, and 100 of those people are rowing in one direction, but one person decides to row in the opposite direction, what do you think would happen with that boat?
Nothing. Might slow down a little bit, but
yeah,
you won't even really notice it, would you?
Yeah, because it's 100, it's 99 people to one.
Right.
So if we really wanted the boat to go in a different direction, we would have no problem doing so. The fact is, we're all insane, psychotic, delusional people who want to have a government to attack. So we want that cop to come up behind us so we can say, oh, they robbed me of my money and all that stuff. Because we want to stop it, we could. We want to have the relationship where we're getting, like you see those people in the same type of relationships over and over and over. Why? Because they want it.
It's
It
the
might be
victim mentality,
subconscious.
right?
Huh?
The victim mentality.
It's just guilt. It's just a projection of guilt. So I mean, we have all kind of ways to characterize it, and I would say those characterizations are valid at that level.
Yeah.
But from the course comes from the ultimate level, from the level of the mind itself, and all of those forms are simply different forms that guilt takes. It's simply different forms of projection. So whether it's the victim mentality, whether it's the self-sabotage, whether it's narcissism or masochism or whatever it is, whether it's it's all simply different forms that the projection of guilt takes. So this one mind believes that it's separate. So when it projects the idea of separation, we have a whole bunch of separation. So we have all different forms that this guilt takes. This person is violent, and this person is deceptive and dishonest, and this person is rude, and this person is we have all these different forms that it takes. This person is very cowardly and fearful, and this person is very self-conscious, and this person is It all takes different forms, but it's all the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. This person is extremely confident and they have to win. You know, a lot of those A people, you think they're successful and they're doing real well, but really it's guilt that's driving them because if they fail, that pain comes to the surface. I remember um, uh, a striking example of it is what is her name uh, Ronda, the MMA fighter. When she was winning, she was on top of the world, and when she lost, she literally wanted to kill herself. And she said in an interview with Ellen, "I thought I'm worthless and nobody's going to value me." That means that was always there underneath.
Right.
But winning was pushing it down. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why she had to win and she had to keep that perfect record because what we saw happen, once she lost, she was faced with the fact that she felt worthless, which we all feel worthless because we believe we're separate from oneness. So whether we're the absolute winner or we're the absolute loser, if we make it real, it is because it's our guilt coming to the surface. The
Very
same
good.
guilt, just taking a different form.
All right. So you mentioned having a free out of body course that you're going to be doing on the website. You want to tell the viewers about that?
Oh yes, you can just go to DarrylEBerryJr.com and just sign up as a research and a research study and a OBE course. So basically, I'll teach people the basic skills like concentration and meditation, and then we'll get into having out of body experiences. And what I'm starting to um, establish as my goal is to help develop an interdimensional Earth.
Mm.
Like we're already interdimensional, but it's subconscious, but a
Mm-hmm.
consciously interdimensional Earth because all the advanced races, they're all consciously interdimensional. So one way is to help us get as much out of body experiences on Earth as possible.
Well,
And
that
here's the
sounds.
link I'll put in the chat as well. I thank you for making it clickable, like you're saying right there.
Yeah.
And you can just go there and sign up. And I'm thinking 20 people. Whenever I get 20 people sign up, then we'll start and we'll just get it going. And you know, I mean, it's not going to heal the unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience, like what helped prepare me, like I was saying earlier, like there's forms of forgiveness that gets you moving. So the experiences that I had out of body, which helped me recognize I'm not just this individual identity. Even though I still saw myself as an individual, I saw myself as consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw everybody's consciousness, and I started to view myself differently. And I'm sure that was would help me along the way to being able to get to the point of understanding A Course in Miracles. So even though getting out of body won't make you enlightened, which is what I believed at first, which is why I was into it so hard. But it is fun to do, and it's a broader perspective than wanting to kill each other because you're black and or you're white or because you're Muslim and you're a Christian. If everybody get out of body and see we're all just the same from that level, then it would definitely make for a different society. Now, to come from the perspective, I don't really expect the world to change. But this is my way of changing myself to a different earth. Because again, the people who want to be hateful, the people who want to believe the earth is flat, there's nothing you could possibly do, I've learned. No amount of evidence, no amount of rational thought will
Mm-hmm.
change their mind. But you can start to build your understanding of science and start to find yourself surrounded by people who think better. So not only is it so really you could say it's a mechanism by which I'll shift myself to an earth where it's a multi-dimensional earth. But it'll look like I'm helping teach a whole bunch of people to get out of body. So if you want to join, join. But if not, I still enjoy just having it there. And at least there's one part on earth. I know there's other parts as well, but there's at least one part on earth where money does not hold sway, and it's just it's like a pocket of the universe where money doesn't exist, if you will.
Mm.
So,
Sounds like a nice place.
yeah.
Is there anything else coming up that you want to talk about? Any events or anything, Daryl?
Oh, no, that's really the main thing. It's just the course, and existential suicide will be coming out soon, and I'm writing some fiction books as well. So, yeah, I guess it's just more writing, and actually, there's a whole slew of classes. Like, basically, the basics development course is the introductory course. Basically, I'm teaching everything I did. Like I got out of body, so I'm teaching people to do that. I've had contact with extraterrestrials, so I'm teaching people to do that. But in order to take that course, you have to take the basic course. So all the different courses, you have to take the basic course first to learn how to concentrate and meditate and things like that. And from there, you can take the out of body experience course or the extraterrestrial contact course, and I'll add other things along the way as we go along.
Excellent.
So
Well, I've got your new book that's coming out on the screen so people can see this cover. This is really nice, dude.
I think so
Uh,
as well. I thought it really speaks to, the terror and the joy of because you look at that candle that's
Mm-hmm.
extinguished,
Yeah.
right? And most of the time we don't want that candle to be extinguished, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's not I want to live forever physically, I want to exist. That I just want to exist in a better state. But when you talk about the purpose of life, it's really to extinguish that flame, not by killing your body or by destroying yourself, but by simply letting go of that guilt and pain.
Right.
And from that place of peace, you realize, you know what, this self can go as well as nothing, and then you're really free. You're in that state of enlightenment, or what I call existential suicide.
Well, perfect. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. Love to have you back again. Always enjoy the time here. Very enlightening discussion. Sherry,
Awesome.
did you have anything? You look like you're choking over there. Are you coughing? Sorry, you're muted.
No, I know. I know. I forgot to mute myself and was kind of popped out.
No, no
I
problem at all.
tell everyone in the chat that I love them so much, and yeah, I think that we should all kind of participate in Daryl's stuff. That'd be fun.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like
Awesome.
fun. Yeah. So, yeah, go over there and sign up, and then we'll learn how to do this together. We'll go meet out of body somewhere. Maybe at
Yeah.
the
That's
pyramids or something. That'd be
Oh
awesome.
yeah. That's fun. That's when you really know it's real. People say it's not real, but once you meet somebody out of body and confirm it when you get back in, it's like, yes, I mean, it's awesome.
That's cool. So probably the more that come together, in that energy, I don't know. It seems like you have a better chance of learning the more people that are there.
Yeah, in my experience, yes. Yeah, it
Sharing their
just,
tips and what they do and that helped, and you know what I'm saying, like that.
yeah,
Because people are so individual, and
I think it does help that group dynamic.
yeah. So we'll do that. That sounds like a lot of fun, and then we'll go from there. Share anything
Awesome.
else before we go?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, lots of love and light to you guys in the chat. And again, thank you, Darryl. His links are below for anybody just joining. So go check out his on his website. You can get his books. You can sign up for this out of body course that's coming up. And that's it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Lots of love and light. Peace.
Have a nice one, y'all.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.